Imagine stepping into a world where the divine isn't just some distant idea, but it's real. A palpable force. You've got gods literally walking among mortals sometimes, shaping the land, deciding fates, whispering to adventurers.
It's fundamental.
You know, paladins drawing strength from their faith, these dark cults lurking around using terrifying power, or even just like a regular farmer praying to a specific god for good weather.
Right. For rain or for sun.
Exactly. It's not just background flavor in D&D. The gods are there. It's baked right into how these worlds work.
Absolutely. In D&D settings, the existence of gods, well, it isn't really up for debate in the game world. You see their power directly.
How so?
Through clerics and their magic, paladins with their oaths and abilities, even through curses or blessings. It's tangible stuff.
And today we're diving deep into that. We're looking specifically at Appendix B, Gods of the Multiverse, from the source material.
Yeah, our mission here is to really unpack what this appendix tells us. What's the role of these deities in D&D worlds, according to the source?
We'll explore some of the pantheons it lays out.
Some specific gods. And really, what does it all mean for you? You know, whether you're playing a character or building a world as a DM, or maybe you're just curious.
It's basically a shortcut, right, to understanding how divinity shapes the whole D&D experience.
Exactly. Because getting a handle on these gods is not just about learning trivia. It makes your character deeper, your world more vibrant.
Makes the game more engaging, definitely. Gives you hooks.
For sure. So the source kicks off by saying, look, religion matters in D&D because the gods are undeniably real. Their presence is felt.
Right, not abstract. It's power you can see and sometimes, unfortunately, feel. So, given that, how do people in these worlds actually interact with the gods? The source talks about different ways, doesn't it?
It does. It lays out a kind of spectrum, really. On one end, it's very practical. People might worship different gods depending on what they need right now.
Like a divine speed dial.
Kind of.
Yeah.
The source uses a Forgotten Realms example. Someone might pray to Soon, the goddess of love, if you're looking for romance.
Makes sense.
Then, before hitting the market, maybe a quick prayer to Wiki, goddess of trade, for good bargains.
Okay.
And if a huge storm hits,
Yeah.
maybe appease Telos, the god of storms. All potentially by the same person, just based on circumstance.
Wow. Okay, so it's not always deep personal devotion. It can be very transactional.
Sometimes, yeah. Necessity-driven worship. Then, moving along, you have people who pick a favorite god.
Okay.
They might not be, a priest or anything, but that God's ideals resonate with them. Their teachings kind of guide their life.
So more of a personal connection there, a guiding philosophy.
Exactly. And then at the far end of the spectrum, you've got full dedication, total commitment to one God.
These are your priests, your clerics.
Your champions, yeah. People who devote their lives to that deity's cause, living by their strictest rules.
Okay, that paints a clear picture of how individuals might approach the divine. How does the source suggest we bring this into our actual games at the table?
Well, first, it's clear. The Dungeon Master calls the shots. The DM decides which gods are active, which ones are important in their specific campaign world.
Right. The DM sets the divine landscape. And for players, what's our role?
As a player, you choose how your character fits in. You can pick one god to really serve, or just worship occasionally, or maybe just pay lip service to.
Or just be aware of them.
Or just know who's who. Yeah, know which temples are important, who people pray to for what. Just being aware is part of it.
And what if you're playing someone like a cleric? Or maybe a character with the acolyte background? Those are directly tied to faith.
The source is very specific there. He says if you're playing one of those characters, you should decide which god you serve, or used to serve. And here's the key link.
The mechanics.
Yes. You should look at that deity's suggested domains listed right there in the appendix next to the god when you choose your character's domain.
Oh, okay.
It even points you to the classes section for the rules on how domains work.
So that's crucial. The god you pick isn't just backstory fluff. It directly impacts the kind of magic and abilities your cleric gets.
Precisely. Your divine power is channeled through the nature of your patron god. It shapes your abilities.
Okay, so we know why gods matter, how people relate to them. Let's get into the pantheons themselves. The source says each D&D world has its own gods, right?
That's the idea. And Appendix B gives us a tour of several. It spends the most time, gives the most detail on the gods of the Forgotten Realms.
The classic setting. Big place, lots of gods. The source says dozens are widely known?
Dozens in the main pantheon, yeah. Plus, tons of lesser deities, local spirits, demigods. It's a busy divine world.
And the source lists them out.
Yeah, provides a really helpful list. For each major deity it gives you, name, alignment, suggested domains, and their symbol.
That structure alone is gold for players and DMs. Just seeing those 4 things tells you a lot.
Instantly.
Okay, let's pull out some examples from that list just to see the variety. Like Oral, goddess of winter. She's neutral evil with nature and tempest domains.
Right. Think about that combo. Neutral evil, nature and tempest. It's not just snow and wind. It's the cruelty of winter, the indifference, the destructive potential.
Yeah, but Cleric of Oral wouldn't just be calling down blizzards.
Probably not someone you want to meet on a cold night. They might actually relish the hardship winter brings. An amazing antagonist concept right there.
Totally. Okay, contrast that with Azuth, god of wizards. Lawful neutral, knowledge domain.
Very different vibe.
Yeah.
Lawful neutral suggests order, rules, structure. Perfect for the study of magic, right? And knowledge domain reinforces that. Azuth is about understanding magic, controlling it, the theory, not just raw, wild power.
So a Cleric of Azuth might be more scholarly, maybe a bit rigid.
Likely, yeah. Focus on magical lore, maybe arcane secrets.
Then there's Shantae, goddess of agriculture, neutral good, life domain, symbols like a sheaf of grain.
Pure goodness, tied to the earth, growth, nurturing. A Cleric of Shantae is about healing, providing food, bringing life, a cornerstone of farming communities.
A total contrast to Oral's destructive winter.
Absolutely. Then you have Kilimvor, god of the dead. He's lawful neutral with the death domain.
Okay, lawful neutral and death domain. That's interesting.
It tells you he's not evil. He's not about causing death unnecessarily. He's about the natural end of life, the proper transition, orderly passage of souls.
So a cleric might be grim, but focused on preventing undeath, making sure rights are observed.
Exactly. Judging souls fairly, maintaining the boundary.
And one more, Tymora, goddess of good fortune, chaotic good, trickery domain. Symbols of face-up coin.
Fun one. Chaotic good and trickery. That screams unpredictable, maybe a bit mischievous, but ultimately benevolent. Taking chances, lucky breaks.
A cleric of Tymora could be all about using cleverness or luck to help people, encouraging bold moves.
Absolutely. Imagine the role-playing, taking risks with a smile, trusting to fate, but, maybe nudging it a little.
Just looking at those few examples shows how much potential is packed into that simple list format. Alignment plus domain.
It's a fantastic resource. And speaking of domains, the source adds a really important note about life and death domains specifically.
Right. It says the life domain is broad. Lots of non-evil gods suggest it.
Yeah, because life covers so much healing, protection, birth, growth, community. So any god associated with those positive, constructive forces might grant it. Doesn't have to be a specific god of healing.
Makes sense. But the death domain, that's usually different.
Typically, yeah. The source points out that the death domain is often suggested by evil deities. And it explicitly states that most clerics choosing the death domain tend to be evil NPCs.
Ah, okay. The default bad guy cleric.
But, and this is important, it immediately says check the Dungeon Master's Guide for more, and crucially, that exceptions exist.
So it's not a hard and fast rule, especially for player characters.
Exactly. It signals the common trope but leaves the door open. A player wanting a death domain cleric who isn't evil. That's a conversation with the DM, and it likely depends heavily on the specific non-evil god they serve, which, conveniently, we'll see an example of soon.
Good to know. Okay, moving beyond the Forgotten Realms, the source also talks about non-human deities, right? Gods tied to specific races.
Yep, gods for elves, dwarves, halflings, gnomes, etc. And these gods are often worshipped across many different D&D worlds. They're not usually setting specific like the main pantheons.
Like Morden for the dwarves.
Exactly. And the source points out these races often have whole pantheons, not just one god. It gives the dwarfen pantheon as a prime example.
Yeah, there's Morden, the head honcho, but then a whole list. Baranar Truesilver, his wife, Apithor, the greedy one, Clueddin Silverbeard for battle.
Dugmarin Brightmantle, Duma Thoin, Gorm Gulfin, Hala Brightax. Yeah, it goes on. Martha Mordwin, Sherindlar, Thard Har, Vergadane, a whole divine family in court.
Reflecting different aspects of dwarven life and culture.
Precisely. And the source adds a neat detail. Different dwarven clans might focus their worship on different members of this pantheon. Adds great flavor.
Definitely adds depth. Okay, the last category the source covers is fantasy historical pantheons. D&D versions of real-world mythologies.
Yeah, adapted for the game. Gives you frameworks that might feel familiar, but with D&D mechanics like alignments and domains attached.
First up is the Celtic Pantheon. Source links it to nature, the wilds.
Forests, moors, that kind of thing. And interestingly, it notes that druids often serve these gods just as much as clerics do, really emphasizes that nature connection.
Got an example?
Sure. You've got the Dagda, god of weather and crops. He's chaotic good with nature and trickery domains. There's that CG trickery combo again, but on a nature god.
Interesting. And on the darker side?
You have the Morrigan, goddess of battle. She's chaotic evil with the war domain. Shows the range even within one pantheon's themes.
Okay, then the Greek pantheon. Source says their influence is everywhere, nature, human heart.
Yeah, very tied into the world and human emotions endeavors. You see Zeus, ruler of the gods, listed as neutral with the Tempest domain.
Athena, wisdom, civilization. Lawful good with knowledge and war domains. Strategic warfare.
Right. And Hades, god of the underworld, lawful evil with the death domain. Again, the D&D alignment and domains give them a specific game feel.
Then the Egyptian pantheon. The source emphasizes Mat.
Yeah, Mat, the cosmic principle of order, truth, justice, balance. Everything and everyone has its place in the grand scheme.
And this is where that death domain exception really comes into play, right?
Absolutely. Perfect example. The source highlights 3 Egyptian deities associated with death, all suggesting the death domain, but with different alignments. You have Anubis, god of judgment, who is lawful neutral. Set, god of murder and the desert, chaotic evil. And Nephthys, goddess of mourning, chaotic good.
Wow. So the source explicitly uses this pantheon to show that death domain clerics don't have to be evil.
Exactly. A cleric of Anubis, LN, or Nephthys, CG, serves a death-related god but isn't evil. It totally reframes the domain.
An Anubis cleric is a judge of souls. A Nephthys cleric comforts the grieving, protects the dead.
While a Set cleric is actively destructive. Same domain, totally different character concepts based on the god's alignment and portfolio. It also lists Riharakti, the sun ruler, neutral good with life and light domains, showing that balance of life, light, and death.
That's fantastic nuance. Okay, lastly, the Norse pantheon. Vikings, harsh lands.
Brutal climate, yeah. Gods reflecting strength, courage, sometimes cunning. The source mentions the 2 families, Aesir and Vanir, allied against giants.
We see Odin, god of knowledge and war. Neutral good with knowledge and war domains.
Wise, battle-savvy leader. Then Thor, storms and thunder. Chaotic good, tempest and war. Mighty protector, but maybe a bit impulsive that CG suggests.
And Loki, of course. Thieves, trickery, chaotic evil, trickery domain. The classic agent of chaos.
Yep. And you even see Tyr, god of courage and strategy, listed as lawful neutral with knowledge and war. A more ordered, tactical approach to war compared to Thor or Odin.
Okay, phew. We've covered a lot. Why gods are central in D&D, how people interact with them, the mechanics link via domains. And then we toured the pantheons from the source. Forgotten realms in detail, non-human gods, and the fantasy historical ones like Celtic, Greek, Egyptian, and Norse, pulling out key examples and details.
So bringing it all back home for you, the listener. All this info from Appendix B. It's your toolkit. It's fuel for your game.
Understanding why gods matter, how worship works, knowing those alignments and domains, it gives you so much to work with.
It helps you understand the setting, right? Why is that temple to Shantae bustling? Because she brings the harvest. Why do people fear the symbol of Oral? Because winter can kill.
Gives you instant NPC ideas, too. That merchant praying to Joaquin, the creepy cultists of Set, the adventurers trusting to Timora.
Provides motivations, conflicts, plot hooks.
And for your own character. Choosing a deity, even just loosely, anchors them. Gives them beliefs, maybe rituals, potential allies, enemies.
Makes them feel part of this world where divine power is real. It turns faith from an abstract idea into concrete story elements.
It's really about using that framework the source gives, alignment, domain, symbol, brief description, to make the divine active in your game.
Exactly.
So, to wrap up our deep dive into Appendix B gods of the multiverse, we've seen why gods are fundamental, how mortals connect with them, and explored the diverse pantheons listed, from the Forgotten Realms to the adapted historical ones.
And I think the really provocative thought, pulling just from this source, is how much weight that combination of alignment and domain carries, especially with something like the death domain.
Yeah, seeing it on Anubis, LN, Set CE, and Nephthys CG in the Egyptian section just drives home how the nature of the god completely changes what wielding that power means.
It forces you to think beyond simple labels. What does lawful neutral death look like versus chaotic good death care? It's fascinating.
And it means really that whatever character concept you're kicking around, you can probably find a divine patron in these lists whose alignment and domains fit perfectly, giving your character instant depth and connection.
So the question to ponder is, Which of these deities, based on their alignment and domains, really speaks to your character concept? And how would that relationship play out?
Absolutely. Well, if you found this deep dive helpful for getting your head around the gods of the multiverse based on this source, and maybe spark some ideas for your D&D games, definitely give us a like.
Yeah, it helps other people find the show.
And make sure you subscribe to the deep dive for more explorations into all sorts of interesting corners of D&D and, well, beyond.